The story began with a glimpse into a bright future. Annette stood in a grand, sunlit hall filled with yellow flowers, celebrating an event she had organized called the Blenheim Empire Expo. It was a massive success, featuring snow wine, desserts, and famous guests. The atmosphere turned romantic when Grand Duke Loic Blenheim found her in the crowd. He wrapped his arms around her from behind and rested his head on her shoulder, confessing that he had been searching everywhere for her and was terrified when she went missing. The guests blushed and whispered at the public display of affection, but Annette just looked surprised. However, the reality 1 year prior was completely different. Back at the Freyas estate, the atmosphere was toxic. The Marquis was furious because Loic had sent a dowry of only 500 deniers for the wedding. He slammed his hand on the desk, screaming that it was an insult and a disgrace to their family. Annette was actually a woman from a modern world who had possessed the body of Annette Frey, a villainess from a novel. In the original story, Annette was an illegitimate daughter who tormented the heroine and was eventually executed. But the new Annette had a different plan. She used to work in a high-pressure advertising job, so she was tough and practical. She saw this marriage as her only chance to escape a house where the servants ignored her and her family treated her poorly. She manipulated her greedy father by suggesting a solution that would save him money. She proposed holding the wedding at the temple, which would be cheap enough to be covered by the Duke's small budget. Her father, caring more about money than his daughter's dignity, agreed immediately. Her brother, Ferdinand Frey, tried to warn her. He told her that the Duke's family despised them because the former Duke died defending the North, and the Marquis was using this marriage to check the current Duke's power. Ferdinand seemed to think she was throwing her life away for their father's sake. But Annette wasn't doing it for her father. She was bored with her restricted life and craved stimulation. She imagined the beautiful, snowy mountains and the majestic castle of the north. She wanted to go there for the scenery and the freedom, deciding that being a duchess in name only was better than her current life. She was determined to go, even if the Duke was cold and distant. Meanwhile, in the north, Grand Duke Loic Blenheim was angry that his plan had failed. He had sent the insultingly low dowry, hoping the Marquis would cancel the wedding, but they accepted it instead. Loic hated Annette because he believed she was the daughter of the people who killed his parents. He came up with a cruel counterplan. He refused to attend his own wedding. Instead, he ordered his terrified aide, Peril, to go as his proxy. He planned to have Peril stand in for him at the ceremony and then immediately abandon Annette, ensuring she never set foot in his territory. His knights supported the idea, fearing she might be a spy. Loic decided he would simply divorce her after some time passed. He silenced any objections from his men with a terrifying glare, forcing them to accept that he would leave his new bride behind without even meeting her. The day of the wedding arrived, but for Annette Frey's, it began not with celebration, but with a battle of wills. Sitting at her vanity, she endured the aggressive brushing of her new attendants, women who were not servants, but jailers handpicked by the Marquis. As they tugged at her hair, they thinly veiled their insults, whispering that her platinum blonde locks looked gray early and mocking her dull skin. They claimed the Marquis was worried about her safety in the north, but Annette saw through the lie immediately. As the room in her mind darkened to a purple void, she visualized the Marquis's true intent. He didn't care about her safety. He wanted to keep a watchful eye on her and the Blenheim Duchy. Staring into the mirror, her eyes hardened with resolve. She promised herself that things would not go the Marquis's way. The ceremony took place in a sunlit cathedral filled with white roses, a picturesque scene that masked the absurdity of the union. Standing beside Annette was not the Grand Duke, but his terrified aide, Peril Otis. As they exchanged vows, Peril shook so violently that he could barely hold the ring. Sweat poured down his face, and he seemed physically repulsed by the idea of touching her. Annette noted his extreme reaction, wondering if he thought she had a disease, but she remained composed. She recited her vows to the trembling proxy, and as the officiant declared the marriage complete, she felt a wave of relief. The legal shackles were in place, now she just had to escape the physical ones. Immediately following the ceremony, the proxy groom attempted to flee. Terrified of the Duke's wrath if he were to be seen with the new Duchess, Peril sprinted toward the exit, clutching a letter he intended to leave behind as an excuse. But Annette was faster. Having already changed into a practical blue traveling cloak, she intercepted him with a bright, feigned innocence. When she cheerfully suggested they travel to the north together, Peril looked as though he had seen a ghost. He stammered out excuses. There was no carriage for her, the journey was too hard, but Annette dismantled them one by one. She revealed a sturdy carriage she had prepared herself, fully cushioned for the long road. When Peril argued they had no escort, she simply pointed to the Duke's own knights standing nearby, cheerfully commandeering them for her own protection. Defeated and overwhelmed by her momentum, Peril and the confused knights were forced to accept her company. Back at the Freys estate, the Marquis's plan unraveled. Janet, the head maid, ran through the halls in a panic, searching for the bride she was supposed to drag back into confinement. When a servant nonchalantly informed her that her grace had already departed for Blenheim, Janet screamed in horror. The Marquis had actually attended the ceremony to ensure his trap was set, but Annette had slipped through his fingers the moment his back was turned. Safe within her carriage, Annette examined a golden box she had received just before leaving. It was a gift from her brother, Ferdin. Inside, she found a staggering amount of expensive jewelry and a note providing an emergency contact, Arsen's aunt. Annette realized with a pang of surprise that Ferdin, the brother she had treated coldly, was the only one who had known of her escape plan and supported her. He had provided her with the means to survive, proving he was truly on her side. However, the journey was far from safe. Outside the carriage, the Duke's knights, led by Vice Captain Hedrick Gaston, were grumbling. They whispered plans to abandon her at the next campsite, convinced she was a nuisance or a spy. Annette overheard their cruel scheme, but refused to be intimidated. She stepped out of the carriage and confronted them, not with anger, but with a stubborn, calculated cheerfulness. Calling them jerks in her mind, she outwardly declared that she would be counting on them, effectively daring them to violate their knightly honor by leaving a noblewoman behind. Hedrick, cornered by her boldness, resigned himself to the situation and formally addressed her as Your Grace. As dusk fell, Hedrick laid a trap. He suggested they stay at the Rauji Inn, knowing full well it would be packed at this hour. It was a test to see if the pampered noblewoman would break when faced with the prospect of camping. Annette, however, accepted the suggestion with a smile, walking right into the setup. When they arrived, the inn was indeed overflowing, and the innkeeper confirmed there were no rooms. Hedrick looked at her with a neutral expression, waiting for her to fail. But Annette didn't falter. Instead, she produced a heavy pouch of gold coins. With a dazzling smile and the confidence of someone who knew the universal language of commerce, she looked at the innkeeper, ready to buy the comfort she desired, leaving the knights stunned by her resourcefulness and her deep pockets. The scene at the Rauji Inn was not merely a display of wealth, but the result of careful calculation. A flashback revealed that days prior, Annette had visited the Intelligence Guild, offloading the jewelry Ferdin had given her. She had accepted a sum far lower than the market value, prioritizing speed and liquidity over profit, much to the guild workers' delight. But she hadn't just come for coin, she had come for intelligence. She had purchased the specific gate schedule of the Blenheim Knights to ensure she could intercept them, and though the guild worker had laughed off her request to reserve a room at the popular Rauji Inn, the information he provided gave her the edge she needed to arrive before sunset. Back in the present, Annette utilized her newfound leverage to wage a different kind of war, culinary diplomacy. She hosted a lavish dinner for the knights, insisting they eat and drink their fill while she dined separately upstairs. The vice captain sat with her, bewildered by her hospitality, asking if she truly expected to return to the capital so soon. Annette smiled innocently, though her inner thoughts were far more strategic. She knew she wasn't going back, and her goal was to raise the affection level of her captors turned escorts. Downstairs, the strategy was working. The knights, expecting a haughty villainess, were floored when she remembered their names, specifically thanking a young knight named Sir Leon. The realization that her grace knew who they were began to chip away at their hostility. The next morning, however, brought the consequences of their revelry. Annette woke up groggy and disheveled, clutching her head and admitting she had drunk too much. The scene downstairs was a landscape of hungover agony, with soldiers sprawled out and groaning. But there was a cure simmering on the stove, a massive pot of spicy tomato stew, a Blenheim tradition for the day after a feast. When Sir Leon awkwardly suggested he could have a separate meal prepared for her, Annette flatly refused. Her eyes were fixed on the red bubbling pot, her soul transfixed by its resemblance to the kimchi stew of her past life. To the absolute horror of the knights, the Grand Duchess sat at their table and demanded a bowl of the commoner's food. Ignoring protocol and class distinctions, she dug in, savoring the spicy kick she had missed since reincarnating. Bells rang in her imagination as the flavor hit her tongue, and she enthusiastically declared it refreshing, wiping the bowl clean. The knights froze mid-spoon, staring at her in disbelief, their perception of the villainess crumbling with every slurp. Meanwhile, far away in the frozen north, the news of her approach arrived before she did. In a castle bathed in moonlight, the Grand Duke stared at a letter from his terrified aide Perel. The message was succinct. The Grand Duchess was returning to Blenheim with the knights. The Duke, a man with a dark reputation rumored to drink the blood of demons, was baffled. He couldn't comprehend why the Marquis's daughter, the infamous villainess, would willingly follow a proxy groom to the harsh north rather than feeling humiliated. His butler, Whitley, read aloud Perel's report, which described a woman who was thoughtful, well-mannered, and surprisingly adaptable. The Duke remained skeptical, suspecting blackmail or a trap. Staring out at his snowy domain, he coldly resolved that while he couldn't turn her away immediately after such a long journey, he would simply house her for a few days before sending her back. He had no intention of keeping a wife in name only. Back on the road, Annette continued to defy expectations. During a rest stop by a river, Sir Jonas found her squatting by the water, her hair wrapped in a strange, sheep-shaped towel hat. She was splashing freezing river water onto her face with zero hesitation. When the horrified knight offered to heat water for her, insisting she shouldn't wash like a common soldier, she waved him off, calling the cold water refreshing. As Jonas walked away with his bucket, confused by why a noblewoman would choose efficiency over comfort, Annette smiled under her eccentric hat. She was surviving the journey not by being the delicate flower they expected, but by being tougher and more pragmatic than any of them could have imagined. She washed up in freezing streams without a word of complaint, and to the men's utter shock, she adapted to the rugged trail better than most seasoned soldiers. Sir Jonas and Sir Leon soon found themselves competing to look after her, though she rarely asked for the help. When she attempted to hoist a heavy wooden supply crate, Jonas and Leon rushed to her side, insisting, "Your Grace, we'll take care of it." While they still addressed her with formal titles, their internal walls had crumbled. Annette noted with a smirk that while they were initially so uncomfortable, they now seemed to forget she was a noble lady at all, treating her instead like a trusted comrade. She even won them over through their stomachs, delighting them by helping with the campfire cooking. As they cheered, "Great job, Your Grace," over a plate of steaming food, Annette felt a surge of professional pride. She had successfully raised the affection level of her captors. As night fell under a massive, glowing moon, the knight's disbelief reached a new peak. Despite the lack of an inn, Annette didn't just endure the forest, she thrived. Jonas watched, baffled, as the villainess of the capital cocooned herself in a patched sleeping bag, sleeping so soundly she looked like a giant, peaceful caterpillar. During these quiet moments, Annette began to dig for the only intelligence she still lacked, the true nature of her husband. She realized these knights would tell her everything except the vault code, so she pressed them for details. The report was intimidating. They described Grand Duke Loic as a man who mastered the sword at 15 and could slay beasts with his aura alone. Personality-wise, they compared him to the ice wall of Blenheim, noting he was so cold he might not speak a word all day. Even his tastes were austere. Jonas remarked that the Duke eats everything like he's chewing on tree bark. The more she heard, the more Annette felt a twinge of the old insecurity. She worried that a man who loved the harsh north and lived for slaying beasts would naturally despise a pampered Marquess's daughter like her. But she quickly steeled her resolve, remembering her past life as a high-pressure advertiser. If she could land a contract with the most detestable clients in the modern world, she could certainly handle one Ice Duke. Upon arriving at the majestic, snow-covered Blenheim castle, the reality of her situation set in. She was greeted not by her husband, but by Wheatley, the imposing yet polite butler. Wheatley and the Duke's aides were visibly nervous, explaining that the Duke was busy and reminding her with great embarrassment that he hadn't even shown up to his own wedding. Left to her own devices in the grand parlor, Annette caught a glimpse of herself in a mirror and let out a horrified shriek. She was covered in soot and grime from the road, the look the knights had been too polite to mention. But as she cleaned up, her trademark confidence returned. She twirled in her gown, deciding that if the Duke saw the pretty version of Annette, he might just fall for her at first sight. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the study, the Duke was having a very different conversation. His aide, Perel, was now firmly on Annette's side, shouting that the Duke was going too far and ignoring her. Loic remained skeptical, dismissing her as a pampered noble lady who would surely complain about the hardships of the north. However, as he looked out at the flimsy carriage she had used to cross the frozen waste, a flicker of genuine interest crossed his eyes. He noted that her hair looked just like the snowy peaks, and conceded that she had more guts than he expected. Though he still planned to send her back to the cozy capital, Annette was already busy in the parlor, stoking her own inner fire, and vowing that she would be the one to do something about this marriage. Comment if you want part 2. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.